Hey, what's up, y'all? It's me here, Michael Franti, and welcome to this week's episode of the Stay Human podcast presented by Gibson Guitars. And I'm super excited to have this guest because she's somebody who really just inspires me. To me, she embodies how it is that you transform whatever pain or trauma or challenging times are in your life into something good and serving the greater good. She's the co-founder of FlyteVu, which is a Nashville-based full-service entertainment marketing agency founded in 2015 that connects brands to consumers through compelling storytelling, unparalleled experiences, and the power of pop culture. And after experiencing the unexpected loss of a loved one due to substance abuse as a result of trauma, Laura's philanthropic efforts focused on mental health, substance abuse disorder, addiction, and trauma. And together with the Onsite Foundation, Laura helped develop and launch a first-of-its-kind trauma-informed therapeutic program called Triumph Over Tragedy that provides tools, support, and a safe community for survivors of mass shootings to find hope and healing regardless of gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. So please welcome to the show today, Laura Hutfless. How you doing, Laura?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm really happy just to have you here. And just in full disclosure, today's a really traumatic day for me because my father just passed away 2 days ago. So I've been just if I burst into tears at any point during this, just know that's where that's coming from. And I say that because
totally fine. If anyone knows about bursting into tears at random times, it is myself. So there's grace for that. We welcome that here.
I was just going to say that you're an expert at grieving, actually, and going through the process of grieving and transformation through it. And before we go into all the work that you do now, I really want to talk about and just do a deep dive about, where you grew up. What was your family like as a kid?
Yeah. So I grew up, my mom was very creative. She was an art teacher. I think we have that in common. Our moms were both teachers. And so she just really fostered imagination and creativity, and we were always drawing or painting or sculpting or reading books. And we were middle class, but we struggled a bit growing up. And so if we couldn't afford a toy or a game, we would just draw it. We would make it up, or we would act it out. And so I got that from my mom. My dad went to the Naval Academy. He was a naval commander, so quite different ends of the spectrum there. But my dad was very driven, very disciplined. He was a tough dad, but he loved us well as best as he could. I don't know that he always had the tools to express that well. He got those later in life, I'm glad to say. But two things he always told me when I was little. One was, you're a smart girl. You can do it. You can do anything. I still hear that voice in my head because words matter. And that really left an impression on me as a little girl. I knew I could do whatever I set my mind to. And then the other second thing he always said, he always wanted me to risk and to try. And he would say, it's okay, you can always move home. And so I had a safety net to fail. And I think that's so important, especially as I'm working with my employees and my staff now. It's encouraging them to fly and to try and be brave, but giving them that safety net.
Yeah. So as you're growing up as a girl, and you're in this household where you had these two very different parents, one super creative and one super analytical and by the book. And what were you interested in as a young child? Like when you were really little, like as far back as you can remember, what were the things that got you excited?
Oh, well, I loved art. I loved art and music. And I remember my mom would go to like the drugstore. It's where they had coloring contests back then. Yeah. And you could color and they would hang up the pictures in the drugstore, in the restaurant.
I remember.
Yeah. And so, we would take a stack of those home and I would color a whole stack of them. And so I remember several contests we would enter, and I would win first, second, and third prize. So talk about an overachiever. I really loved competition. I loved art, loved music. I loved sports. I was really, and we can talk about this later in life, but I was really focused on achievement, and that started to backfire as I got older. But when I was young, I was really driven and just loved being active. My family was very religious. And so I loved going to church. I loved meeting with the missionaries. I loved being in plays and singing in the choir, playing the piano. And I joke that I was raised on Jesus and John Wayne. So my mom was very focused on church, and my dad, we were watching Westerns and war movies. And so that was the dynamic in our house.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one older sister. She's 3 years older than I. We were close growing up. As we got older, she got married very young and had kids very early. I did not, took the business route. And so we're still close, but two very different paths in life.
Yeah. And so then as you became an adolescent, what were the challenges that came up for you as, a young person just trying to find yourself?
Yeah. Well, because of my dad's job, we moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
So every 3 years, we were moving to different towns. And that's hard when you're a kid. You're trying to fit in, especially as a teenager. That combined with my insatiable desire to achieve led me to an eating disorder. I had a pretty severe case of anorexia. Back in the 90s, that wasn't talked about publicly. And my mom really fought to find treatment for me. So I actually ended up being admitted inpatient to one of the first eating disorder treatment centers in the country. In the 90s. And by the grace of God, I survived that. One of the very few to come out of that program and survive. But what that taught me early on at 16, 17, is that life is short. And there's a dark side, right? There's grief and there's depression. And it really changed my perspective. And so, going through college and even the workforce, I was very focused on wanting to help people, wanting to give back. I didn't want to waste a lot of time with what I considered frivolous activities. I had seen kind of both ends of the spectrum of life. I had seen something very dark and hard. I had come through that, but I had also experienced great joy and hope.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to just talk about that a little bit deeper, because it's so prevalent today. Just the idea of body image and the imagery that we see, all of us see every day, as we scroll through our Instagram accounts, as we look on social media, and we see everybody trying to present not just about their body, but trying to present their best life. Like everything's okay, everything's great. I'm doing a handstand on this rock on this beach, or whatever it is that's like showing you as your perfect, your best self. But so often all of us are carrying this like weight inside, or this grief or this sadness, or when we look at those pictures, we feel less than. So can you describe how that was for you at that time? And then maybe not to jump too far ahead, but just how maybe you have some thoughts on how people can navigate that today, especially for young people who don't have this frame of reference of looking back now, but they're right in it.
Yeah. We have to be so careful what we let in. And I mean, now more so than ever, I didn't even grow up with social media. So I can't imagine the voices and the just thoughts and comparisons that teenagers are going through now with social media and so many platforms. But I found that for me, it was really controlling my thoughts and choosing my thoughts and choosing truth. So we all have those voices that tell us we're not good enough, someone's better, we'll never achieve it, that this is the darkest day, it won't get better, whatever those voices are saying, we all have those. but we can choose to pick up that thought or not. And I had to intentionally choose to set that thought aside. And I envision it as like a stick kind of running down a stream, and I'm on the bank of the stream, and I see the thought, and I just let it go, and I let it go over the waterfall, and I don't pick it up. Because if I pick it up and I dwell on it, that thought will become rooted in my heart, and it will become truth. And I do not want that. That will lead down a deep, dark path. I've been there. I know. So instead, I choose to replace that with something positive or something truth. For me, it's scripture. For me, it's knowing that my worth is in the creator of the universe. And so I hang on to those thoughts. And so something I use, which hopefully can maybe be a tool for listeners, is I have something called a thought box. And so it's right here because I keep it with me all the time.
Yeah, let's see it.
My thought box, it's Chanel, yeah. There's nothing Chanel in it. But whenever I have negative thoughts, or just like before I was getting ready to do this podcast, I was quite nervous. And so I would write those thoughts. I put them in the box, I seal them up, and I leave them there. And I don't pick them up. And so it's something visual and experiential that helps me navigate those voices that ultimately, I fought the battle with when I was 17, the voices that said I was unlovable, I was fat, my body wasn't perfect, all of those things, to now when I'm older and the voices are different, but they're still there. But I've learned to control the thoughts.
Yeah. That's kind of how I use music. For me, it's like when I'm in moments of feeling really heartbroken, I write about it. And sometimes it is just writing a few words down, and sometimes it's actually writing a song or writing melodies. I want to jump a little bit further forward now. So, you've gone through high school, and now you're entering into, I guess you went to school. Did you go to school after high school?
Yes, I went to NC State. Yep. And I went to design school.
Okay. So what was that like coming out? Did you feel like this sense of transformation and like, I've gone through this period of really heavy darkness, and now I'm feeling more complete and on fire now to really approach this? Or was it still really challenging as you went into your college years?
By the time I went to college, I was feeling pretty confident. I actually started sharing my story, and that was something that, again, really didn't happen with girls who had suffered eating disorders or were struggling with body image. And so that really became my purpose, is I wanted to help other girls. I started an organization on campus. I started working with the National Eating Disorder Association. I did fundraisers, and I really wanted to help young girls. And I think when I look back at my story through every kind of hardship that I've had, I can look back and I can see that I've really strived to find that purpose. And in that, it was helping other girls and being a voice and sharing the hard. I think that's the only way we truly heal, is when we can heal in community. So that's how I went into college, found my voice, found my passion, of course, combined that with art and music and all the things I loved, and helped me process the pain. Yeah.
And so what was your first connection to the music business?
Oh boy. So, you know the music business, you try to get a job any way that you can and try to break in. And so I was in Raleigh.
I tried to get a job as a singer.
Well, it's working out for you. So unfortunately, I did not have that gift. I am completely tone deaf. And so I had to go into the business side of the equation. But I got an internship at Sugar Hill Records. It was a record label in Raleigh. Dolly Parton, the Ducks, Reckless Kelly, some really great acts in the day. And also interned at WQDR, which was a record label. And so I just started networking. Artists would come to town, the Brooks and Dunn tour, or some big tours would come, and I just network with whoever I could, and would make trips constantly to Nashville just to take a coffee meeting. I mean, social media and LinkedIn didn't exist. So if you got someone's number, you called it until you got a coffee, and you drove 9 hours to take it and then drove 9 hours back. So that's how I networked until I graduated. And then I moved to Nashville despite my my father's dismay. And I did
But
it
what did he
anyway.
say about it? What did he did he
So,
discourage you? Was he, what the hell are you
yeah,
doing? Was it
well, my father's very old school, and so you don't move until you have a job, and that's not how Nashville works. You have to be in town and be networking and pay your dues. And so I moved, and then I told my dad I moved after I had already moved. So yeah, but it worked out. I got a job pretty quickly and started working my way up the ladder.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide, like, wow, I've done all I can do and working for other people, and I think I want to, do something on my own? I mean, that's a whole other jump. And, getting back to what Dad said about there's always a safe landing place.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're the age or not, the thought of having to move back home doesn't always sound so great,
Yeah.
So tell me about that risk of, becoming an entrepreneur yourself.
Yeah. Well, I had a great career as an agent, loved my job, loved the work I was doing. But I had really lost the purpose. I had lost the why. I knew the what. I could do the what really well. But I couldn't tell you why I was doing it. And that combined with a trip I had taken with a few missionaries over to Cambodia and Vietnam, and really immersed myself in learning about sex trafficking and modern day slavery, and really having a heart for helping young girls, realized that I wanted to do something with a higher calling, and really started to think about how I could combine my purpose and my passion with my skill set. And so FlyteVu was really born out of the belief that we can do good business and we can do good. And it wasn't about how much money we could make, but how much money we could give.
Okay.
And we started the company. It's obviously an agency, a full service agency. Our corporate clients, range from Enterprise to American Red Cross to, Victoria's Secret. We work with lots of big brands, but all of our campaigns are mission based. So we're really looking to drive culture, for equality, for equal rights. There's always a purpose behind our programs. And then a percentage of everything that we make goes into something called the FlyteVu Fund. And that's a donor advised fund that our clients and our staff can access to give money to different charities and philanthropies that they're passionate about. And so we're coming up this year, we'll reach $1 million through that fund. And so we're excited about that. But it was honestly FlyteVu, we built it on that, like how much we can give and how much we can give back.
Yeah. And did you find that was something that made the wheels turn more smoothly, or did you find it was something that people were resistant to, or how did that work once you made that commitment to that?
Well, I should back up. When I decided to leave my job to start FlyteVu, I had no business training. So if you recall, I went to art school, not business school. So I had a great logo, but not a great business plan. And so I remember, showing my P&L, or what I thought a P&L was supposed to be, to a few friends when we started out, and they all told me it was crazy that, you can't give away that much money. We had no funding. I mean, we were starting from nothing.
Yeah.
And I just said, well, I believe in a crazy God. Like, I just believe that you can't outgive God. And so when I was growing up, my parents had instilled in us that at least 10% of everything that you make goes back to God or goes back to helping others. Yeah. And so I remember even the tooth fairy money I got. Like, I got $1 for a tooth fairy. I had to give 10 cents in the offering plate. And so that just was instilled in me from such a young age that I just couldn't imagine doing business any other way. And so I said, let's start with 10%. And every year we're going to increase it by 5. And so this year we're at 25%, and hope to continue that to get to 30 this year. So I think at the beginning, everyone thought couldn't be done. But I believe in a big God. I think anything's possible.
Awesome. So let's talk now about Onsite,
Mm-hmm.
the Onsite Foundation, and
Yeah.
tell me what led up to you starting this and beginning to really work with, addiction, mental
Yeah.
health, gun violence.
Yeah. Well, my life really took a turn, took a 180. So I met a man by the name of Austin Eubanks. And a little backstory, if people aren't familiar. So he was wounded in the Columbine school shooting in the 90s when he was 17 in high school. He lost his best friend in the library that day, and that changed his life forever. Experienced just unthinkable trauma. That was really the first mass shooting that many of us remember. And the doctors, because he was wounded, prescribed him Oxycontin, a 90-day supply. And that's back in the 90s when there wasn't knowledge about the addictive nature of those drugs, or at least public knowledge of the addictive nature of those drugs. And so he became addicted and fought a 10-year battle with addiction. The good news is he found recovery with a wonderful organization called Stout Street in Denver, and went on to become a nationally recognized speaker, spokesperson, really an advocate for people who have suffered trauma and who have medicated with addiction, and really became a great spokesperson in that arena. And that's where we met. So that's how I met Austin. And we fell in love. We started a relationship, and I really, for the first time, thought, this is my person. We're both passionate about helping others and loving others and helping people through trauma. It was around the 20th anniversary of Columbine, so around May of 2019. And I got a phone call one night that Austin had passed away, that they had found him. He had relapsed. And, right away after the shock of that news, the first thing you ask is, what did I miss? What could have I done? What didn't I see? And that really launched a journey for me, not just through my own grief and my own loss, but also my desire to understand trauma and pain, addiction, more than I ever had. And I had no experience with it in my own life. And so I just started diving in and meeting people, talking with people, sitting in people's stories, really to heal my own. And that began a beautiful journey of, I would say, really understanding my own brokenness, really seeing joy, seeing pain, seeing all the colors of the rainbow, and really understanding grief at a deep level.
Mm-hmm. Had you ever had anybody close to you die before this in your life?
Besides my grandparents, which are expected, right? But nobody that was unexpected, that was kind of out of order, should you say. And so that was just a different loss. It felt unreal for a while. And then of course, you bargain, you're angry, you go through all the stages of grief. And I know there's 5 typical stages of grief, but I discovered a 6th for me, and that was purpose. Not a purpose in the death or not a purpose in the loss. I don't believe there's a purpose in that, but there's a purpose in knowing Austin and being a part of his story. And there's a purpose, I think, for all of us, that our journey is intertwined for a reason, and we're meant to carry each other at different times in our lives and learn from one another and carry that love forward and grow from those experiences. And so my purpose in that was that I started to uncover a need for tools and resources for survivors of mass shootings. That there's a lot of resources in the immediate aftermath, but that's not really when survivors need hope. or need those resources, right? They're in shock at those moments.
Yeah.
It's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road when those wounds, are still bleeding, and they're trying to figure out how to function in the world with these deep traumas. And so having seen that, I knew I couldn't sit around and not do anything about it. I had just lost the person I loved more than anything in the world. And I could not sit by and watch other lives being lost. Not when there was a solution, and when there were tools and resources available. So set off to build the first trauma-informed workshop for survivors of mass shootings. I have no trauma training. I draw pretty pictures. Okay, I can create a great logo. But really, for me, it was finding the right people, the right partners. The Onsite Foundation was a wonderful partner. Finding survivors who could come and be part of our council, finding the right therapists, the right grief counselors, to really build the first of its kind program.
Yeah. What you're talking about of just, as I mentioned before, my father just passed away, and he was 98, and he had survived a triple heart bypass, open heart, like full cavity surgery, when he was 90. And then he had COVID for 2 months, and he made it through that. And then 5 days later, after he got home, he passed away. And, last night I was just sitting there with my 2-year-old and hugging my 2-year-old in bed, and just trying to imagine, what it would be like if I lost like my son, unexpectedly. And I have another son who actually he's 22, who is has a very serious health condition. He needs a new kidney. So this whole idea like that you lose people too early or too soon, like no one should ever have to bury their child ever, period. Yeah, it happens, and how is it that you navigate that with families? Like, how do you even start to approach that kind of trauma with the foundation? What do you guys do?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say the loss of a child is really what we see as the worst loss. Like, that is a really difficult trauma for people to work through. We actually have several programs at the foundation. One is survivors of mass shootings. We also have another program called Life After Loss, and that's for parents who have lost children. Some of our survivors fit into both of those groups, unfortunately, where they've been in a mass shooting, they lost a child in a mass shooting. And so what we find, especially with Life After Loss, is that when the attendees come out of that workshop, the thing that they found the most healing in was the community. Is that being in a community with other people who had experienced that same loss, you didn't even have to talk. You just sat in a room and you all understood the journey, that alone was healing. Yeah. And what we know about pain is that you can only offload pain in community. And so that's something, as we're going through a pandemic as a country, it's why we're seeing mental health numbers grow and mental health decline in the country, is because we've lost community this past year, and we need to really hang on to that, because that's how we process grief and pain, is by sharing with others.
Can you describe that a little more, like that you can only offload grief in community? Talk to me more about that, about how that works.
Yeah, well, we're not meant to carry it alone. Like if there's a verse in the Bible, bear each other's burdens. And so I think we were made as humans for connection with each other and with nature. And I think we are all one, where we're meant to feel things and help each other through the journeys. And so at Onsite specifically, where we bring groups of people together that have experienced those things together, they can then offload that pain together, where they have a collective experience. They're vulnerable, there's safety in that. And what we know too about processing pain and trauma is that the body first has to be safe. It has to feel safe before you can start to process. And so by creating that safety of people who have experienced the same type of loss, the surroundings are safe, you now have the safe environment to start to work through it where your body can actually relax, and start to peel back the layers of those traumas.
Mm. You know, it's such a big subject right now because we are in this pandemic and everybody has had to have at least moments of isolation. And even if you're isolating with your family, you know, there's a lot of time there's blocks that we have with our family members, and now we're faced with that feeling of isolation, even with the people that we're closest to. And then on top of it, we're receiving all this information through, you know, our attention economy is like, you know, how much of my time is on Instagram, Facebook, the news, you know, watching these feeds coming at me. And I feel like that has gone up, at least it has in our house. The number of hours has gone up during the pandemic because we're not out doing things like we used to do. Mm-hmm. You know, how is it that we navigate this time? Like, how do people get through it? I mean, it's like every day I wake up and I have this one voice. It's like, this world is a total shit show. And there's this other voice that's like, yeah, but you can make it and you can help to fix it. You know, like, how do we balance those two internal, you know, talking voices?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's where my roots are. Like, what do I choose? Where do I choose to plant my roots? And for me, my roots are in my faith, right? In a God that never changes. There's a verse that says that the mountains fall into the earth, right? Or into the sea, and the waters foam. You know, God is our refuge and our strength. Like, no matter what, the earth could fall apart, but He won't. And actually, the end of that paragraph or that section of the Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." And so I find in times that it feels like everything is spinning and everything is spinning out of control, it's for me just to be still and realize that I am not God and I am not in control. And the humility of that, I think, brings me back to understanding who I am, that my worth is stable and that I am strong and that I am safe and I am protected, and I have to trust that there is a greater plan that is going on around me and that there's a purpose in that. So that's where my roots are. I think other people, you know, find meditation to be helpful and find music and other things to ground them. And I think we just have to stay grounded. And again, really, I would say really filter what we let in front of our eyes and let in our ears.
You know, it sounds a lot like what your father had said, that you've always got a place to come back to, you know, and I think it is really important in this time that all of us find some form of foundation like that, whether it is your religious practice, or whether it's your yoga or meditation, or whether it's taking a walk every day, or whether it's having that friend that you can talk to who you can offload like you described before and feel that sense of community of sharing ideas about the world, or sharing what we're feeling it's weighing on our heart, or sharing what brings us great joy. And so I just want to say thank you for doing this incredible work, because I, in the last, you know, several years have taken up this issue of gun violence, and I've seen the way that it's affected families, and they all describe a similar thing, which is none of them ever expected to be in this, you know, quote unquote club of people who have lost family members, and yet all of them who are in there are, you know, just passionately driven to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. And so is your organization also, do you guys also deal with prevention? Is that part of it? Or are you guys really just focused on, dealing with trauma afterwards?
We're really focused on the trauma, on really working with survivors, because I think what we find is people, and especially press and media, focus on the victims, right, and the story, right, when it happens. But there's thousands of, not just the people that were there and affected, but there's thousands of family members and first responders and police officers. I know there's a stat from Columbine specifically where several, if not the majority of the first responders, committed suicide after Columbine. And so, these first responders aren't prepped for this level of trauma either. And so we forget and we move on, but these people have to live with their wounds. And they say, if you don't heal your wounds, you bleed on everyone else around you. Right. And so it's not just about helping that person, it's the family and it's everyone that surrounds them and it's the community. And so we have to come around these communities and give them tools and resources for the long term, not just in the first year. And so that's where we really focus our efforts. And so I have to say thank you, because actually when Austin passed away and we decided to start the memorial fund with the Onsite Foundation to do this work, you were the first one to actually believe in it and to make a donation from your show at Red Rocks. And so that actually went to host the first workshop. And so we had about 50 survivors come in, full scholarship, from different events across the country, from Aurora to Columbine to the Vegas shooting. And so they all came in March of 2020 and did the first workshop. And so we have such a large waiting list now that we're going to do 2 this year. And depending on funding, we hopefully will be able to offer more. But if you haven't read the blog or read any of the stories of some of the survivors who have gone through the program, you should read it because you made a difference and you saved lives. Like that program saved lives.
Nice.
So thank you so much for your heart and for believing in that work.
You're welcome. And I do believe in it. And I think that what you're doing is so on the cutting edge. This is an issue that really in past generations didn't have to deal with in the way that we do now. And so I just want to say thank you for being here on the podcast today. It's been really healing for me just to hear your commitment, just to hear your grounding, and to hear your passion for this work. And at the end of every one of these podcasts, I ask everyone the same question, which is, what does it mean to you to stay human? Like, what does it mean to be human? But also, how do you stay there? How do you hold on to it?
Yeah. For me, to stay human means to stay open. And I think, shame tells us to hide. Anger tells us to hold on to the hurt. Fear tells us to not let anybody in. But then we lose our humanity, right? We lose the specialness of what it means to be human and live and feel. If you want to feel the joy, you're going to have to go through the pain. I think it means to stay connected, which we talked about, holding space for others, which you do so well. That's not easy, but to be open to other people's stories and to know that we're all connected in that way. We all feel the same things. We're all walking through the same journey. And then last for me is stay rooted in hope, that a hope that is unshakable. I have, to circle back around, when I was in the hospital for my eating disorder at 17, my mom hung a Bible verse across the hospital bed. And so every morning when I woke up, I would see that verse, and it was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And I've tattooed it on my wrist, if you can see that. And so it's, hope that there's a bright future, right? And in this world, we're here for a short time, but we have eternity to live, and with the ones that we love, and a hope in that greater future.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And for people who want to either know about the work that FlyteVu is doing or about the Onsite Foundation, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can go to flytevu.com is the website for the company. But more importantly, please check out the onsitefoundation.org. All the programs are listed there. And so not only do we do programs for survivors of mass shootings and parents who have lost children, but we have a support and service for first responders. And then we have a new program for Black therapists to get the support that they need during these times. So we're always launching new programs. So if anybody needs help or resources or tools, please reach out.
Great. We have been talking with Laura Hutfless, who is just an incredible person. She's the co-founder of FlyteVu and Onsite Foundation. Thanks for doing the amazing work that you're doing. I know that there's going to be people here who have listened to this who really resonate with so many things that you've described in your message and your healing and your purpose. So just keep rocking on and doing the great work. The world needs it more than ever. So thank you.
Thank you very much.